Welcome to episode 50 of Fascinating, a Star Trek podcast. Patterns of Force.
In this week's episode, Kirk and Spock encounter a society based on Nazi Germany, and apparently led by a Federation official sent to the planet in an observational capacity some years earlier. In trying to find out what has happened, they end up involved with an underground resistance movement. But can they recover their colleague safely? Or will they find his regime too difficult to break down?
Oh, Mr. Spock, the guard did a very professional job on my back. I'd appreciate it if you'd hurry.
Yes, of course, Captain.
Good evening, Ian. How's it back?
Good evening, Gerry. It's not too bad.
Professional job done on it?
As always.
Glad to hear it.
Episode 50.
The big 5-0.
Oof, up there with your age. You should cut that then.
We'll move on.
Did you enjoy this week's episode?
Yeah. I've mentioned it before. I think I prefer the episodes that are not set sort of in space. And I like City on the Edge of Forever. I liked A Piece of the Action.
Yep.
This one. So I think I prefer
the ones that are set in 20th century Earth.
Yes.
That's your favourite thing about Star Trek. Interesting. Were you comfortable with this week's subject matter?
I think so, yeah. Certainly looking at it in 2021, it's not quite obviously as raw as it would have been.
Sure, but we've also got to deal with the fact there's been a resurgence of interest in fascism in the Western world.
That's true.
In recent years.
I don't think they do anything to minimise.
Sure, and they don't endorse or glorify it.
No.
There's maybe a little bit trivialised.
Sure. But it wasn't uncommon for Nazis to appear in these type of shows back then. I mean, I remember there was a Wonder Woman episode, I remember that as a kid.
Okay.
I think at this point, sort of what we're talking, 20 odd years since the end of the war, and I think at that point it might have been just long enough for them, perhaps prior to the 60s, you would only have discussed it in a very serious and official manner in documentaries and news broadcast discussions, and now they've thought, okay, it's enough times passed where we can use it in the area of entertainment.
Sure. So, shall we get on with the episode?
Why not? Let's crack on.
You must have been delighted to see us open up on the bridge.
Yeah, where Kirk orders Chekhov to go to a standard orbit around Ekos, is that right?
The blue planet, not the red one that they have to fly past first.
Before he tells Uhura to try and reach a certain John Gill on communications.
Yes, Spock gives us the names of the planets. The first one that they're passing by is called Zeon, and the second one is Ekos.
Now, I'm taking it that Zeon, it's not a coincidence that it sounds like Zion.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. It's an allegory for Jewish people, I would imagine.
Very nail on the head,
quite on the nose, isn't it? Yes. Who should we mimic these victims of Nazis on? What about the actual victims of Nazis?
Now, we find out that apparently they have been trying to reach this Gill for 6 months, and they don't know what has happened to him. Obvious question, they've only now decided after 6 months, we better look into this.
Well, I guess this is to do with where they've been and, I don't know, priorities, I don't know. Maybe he's recovering Gill. He was just an observational, maybe he's been killed. It's not that big a deal. He was just observing society. Just go and try and find out what's happened. It's not a rescue mission of that sort.
Yeah, just seems a little bit inconsiderate.
A bit laissez-faire.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Bones who gives us this information. He says it's probably wishful thinking to imagine that Gill is suddenly going to respond when they try to reach him now. Yeah.
We see a picture of him on a screen and discover that he was one of Kirk's instructors at the academy, and that Spock has read a lot of his work.
Well, he certainly is impressed by Gill's approach to Earth history, focusing on causes and motivations rather than dates and events. Well, that's interesting, but as you know, history is written by the victors, so
always
his causes and motivations may well not be objective.
No doubt. Uhura reports that there is no response to the communications as Chekhov informs them that a spacecraft from Ekos is approaching.
It's interesting use of the term spacecraft. It's a missile.
Yeah.
Spock surmises initially it must be a Xeon ship, as they're the only one of the 2 planets to have interplanetary capability.
And we find out it is on a interception course.
Yes, which is a further surprise because the targeting capability is beyond what they would have expected to be here.
And then they're concerned to find out that it is not a spacecraft, but, as you mentioned or alluded to, is an unmanned ship which is carrying a warhead.
Yes, a thermonuclear warhead, as it turns out after Chekhov is instructed to blast it out of space. I'm not sure how it explodes that way without any oxygen to burn.
Yeah.
TV.
Sure. Kirk suggests that maybe because this planet shouldn't have had the technology, that maybe they had a little bit of help. And that reminded me of the episode 2 weeks ago, A Private Little War.
Yeah, I've exactly that in my notes. Similar to A Private Little War, they know that this tech is beyond what should be available to the planet. So obviously maybe they're thinking, could be Klingons.
Mm-hmm. That's what I thought.
We get the credits at this point.
And then back to the bridge. They retreat out of orbit and still have nothing from Gil, which McCoy says means that he must be dead, but I'm not sure about that.
It's a bit of a leap.
Sure, he could be ill, he could be captive.
Yeah, this is like the 4th time in this scene that Uhura's confirmed that Gil can't be contacted.
Yeah. They discuss how the Ecosians are apparently anarchic, primitive and warlike, while the Xeons are what?
They're more technologically advanced and are a peaceful race. It's a bit generic, isn't it?
Yeah, because they're not all peaceful and they're not all warlike.
Here's some good guys, here's some bad guys.
Yeah. Kirk sees this as a bigger problem than a missing man. Again, I thought a little bit ruthless, a bit callous of it.
Well, not caring about the man.
Yeah.
You think he cares, but additionally, you've now got the issue of the advanced tech.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's thinking it's Klingons, that would be a bigger deal than just one observer going missing.
Of course. So he decides that he and Spock will beam down and asks McCoy to give them a subcutaneous transponder?
Subcutaneous, under the skin.
Right, okay.
I've got a note here. How many other episodes would this have been useful in?
All of them.
Pretty much.
Well, I've noted here, what is this and why has it not been used before?
Yeah, so they've put a chip under their skin that should allow them to be beamed up if required, if they've lost their communicators or whatever else.
This is just Superman reversing the Earth.
Essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Also, how is it okay for him to take Spock with him when last week it was, we can't both leave the ship?
Precisely. He's making this up as he goes along.
Yes, one rule for him and another rule for him at a different time.
In the transporter room, McCoy injects the transponder into their arms as Kirk tells Scotty to make a pass at an agreed time.
3 hours from now.
And if they can't speak, then he's to take the coordinates from the transponder and beam them back up.
Do you know, this could have been fixed with a short scene of Scotty being excited about this new tech that they've brought on board. But
then they would have to, I'm presuming that they don't use it going forward, maybe they do.
Yeah, you would have to have it available always, yeah.
Yeah, or else it doesn't work properly and they think it's too risky, so we can't use this again. Something
or it breaks or something.
Something almost kills them.
Did you like Kirk's jeans?
Jeans, yeah, I'd noted it was sort of prison gear,
right, yes,
issue.
Standard Levi's.
Yeah. And we should also say that Spock is wearing his hat.
It's like the one from City on the Edge of Forever. Covers his ears.
Now, why did they get down wearing different clothes?
From what?
They normally get down to a planet just wearing whatever. They don't change.
Because they're not allowed to interfere with this culture. They have to hide.
But they're not allowed to interfere with any culture, apparently.
Well, they are if they've been made contact with previously.
Listen, there's been plenty of times when they've went down and they haven't changed into the local
garb. On
this
occasion they did.
Yeah.
Same as on Private Little War. They're making an effort sometimes. Maybe Kirk's been reprimanded for previous incursions and he's saying, right, okay, we're definitely going to go down and make no impact in this society whatsoever.
And where did they get this stuff?
They just make it.
Do they?
They've got computers that make these things.
Sure.
Yeah. They don't have a wee woman sewing it in a room.
Because remember when they went down, I think it must have been City on the Edge of...
Yeah.
They had to steal clothes.
Yeah, because they didn't expect to have to change. They were on the planet, remember? And then the Guardian of Forever sent them back in time. They didn't beam down expecting to go back in time.
Okay. Anyway, where are we? Yeah, we arrive on this Earth-like street. It has a European feel to it.
Yes, that's why Spock makes the comment about the architecture.
Sure.
And a man runs round the corner, stumbling to the ground, and urges Kirk and Spock to hide because they are right behind him.
So they do this, and then witness a group of military types approach the man on the ground, call him a Xeon pig, kick him in the face, which is quite brutal actually. I thought that was,
for the times,
yeah, and for the show itself, and then hit him with a truncheon as they tell him not to touch anything cozy, and then they drag him off. So this was more severe than what I would have expected.
Yeah, and we see that they're wearing actual swastikas on their arms.
Again, it might have been easier because we're looking at sort of allegories or...
Yeah, they could have fudged that and had a different symbol.
Yeah.
No, this went straight up. Which caused some discussion between Kirk and Spock, but before that, Kirk tries to intervene.
Yes, but is reminded by Spock of the non-interference directive, which he ignores all the time.
Yes, and we get some minor exposition now from one of the guards who says that the Zeons have defiled Akos for the last time and that this has now ended.
And as they talk of what they witnessed, they are interrupted by a public announcement with accompanying visuals on a screen.
Unbelievable. Do you recognize those uniforms?
Mid-20th century Earth, the nation state called Nazi Germany.
Attention! 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 An announcement from Fuhrer headquarters. Today, the Fuhrer has ordered our glorious capital to be made Zeon-free. Starting at dawn, our heroic troops began flushing out the Zeon monsters who've been poisoning our planet.
How could this have happened? The chances of another planet developing a culture like Nazi Germany, using the forms, the symbols, the uniforms of 20th century Earth are so fantastically slim.
Virtually impossible, Captain. Yet the evidence is quite clear.
Fuhrer's headquarters reports repulsing an attack by Zeon spacecraft. Our missiles utterly destroyed the enemy.
You look quite well for a man who's been utterly destroyed, Mr. Spike.
At this patriotic demonstration, Deputy Fuhrer Malakon presented the Iron Cross, second class, to Darius, hero of the fatherland. Everywhere, preparations go forward toward the final decision. Death to Zeon. Long live the fatherland. Long live the Fuhrer.
That's John Gill. The Fuhrer?
Fascinating.
You, Zion.
I'm pretty sure the nation state was not called Nazi Germany.
No. Anyway, a Nazi with a gun approaches them at this point, but they manage to knock him out and decide to take his weapon and for Spock to wear his uniform.
Do they put Spock's clothes on him or do they leave him naked?
Naked.
Okay.
And as soon as he is changed, they're approached by a senior Gestapo who is told by Spock that Kirk is a Xeon pig.
Yes. Very quickly, though, they are able to overpower this officer as well, and Kirk takes his uniform and jokes with Spock that it's nicer than the one he has.
Yeah, he is enjoying the opportunity to play the Hun.
Kirk is in a very jokey mood. This is the third time, and we heard one in the clip, and then in between he was joking about Spock's helmet covering a multitude of sins. Now, he's obviously in not a particularly serious mood this week.
But he should be.
You would think.
Also, I noticed, was it just me, the audio sounded dubbed in several parts in this episode, especially at this point.
I think that's standard if they're doing outdoor.
Yeah, but you don't notice it normally. It really didn't sound like a great job.
Right.
Anyway.
I can't say I noticed myself. They're heading now to the Chancellery, and outside they encounter another group of Nazis, including a major, who takes Spock to task for not saluting appropriately. Yeah,
he asks for his papers. Kirk quickly lets him know what he's referring to and explains his lack of respect as being due to being recently assaulted whilst dealing with the Zeon scum.
Yes, he got a blow to the head. And it looks like they're going to be permitted into the building, but the Major has a sudden change of heart.
Yeah, he tells Spock to get a doctor to check him over as his colour is concerning, and then asks him or orders him to remove his helmet.
Yes, Spock doesn't want to comply at first, but ultimately has no choice.
Yeah, at gunpoint he does, revealing his ears to the shocked Nazis.
Yeah.
So we skip from there to a jail cell.
Oh, an interrogation room I have. Kirk and Spock are being whipped.
Both topless.
Yep, and neither one of them is flinching despite being covered in blood.
Well, red paint or something. Yeah, it doesn't seem to have any effect at all. That wasn't particularly well done.
Spock's blood's green, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
The man that they saw in the street earlier is in an adjoining cell. He can see what's going on.
The Major then calls for it to be stopped, and he demands to know what they are doing and accuses them of being on a mission to murder the Führer.
Well, Kirk continues joking at this point before demanding to speak to the Führer, but he's not going to be allowed.
No, and at this, the party chairman, named Enig.
Yeah, that's Gene backwards. It's a Gene Roddenberry.
Ah, there you go, yeah. Dropping the trivia in.
Yeah.
Okay. He enters and the Major salutes and grovels before beginning to describe what is going on. But Enig has had a full report and walks over to Spock, who sort of drolly admits that he is not from Zeon.
No, but Kirk insists that they will only discuss this matter directly with the Führer.
Yeah, I think he gets a baton to the stomach for his troubles here.
He does. The Major's furious, but Enig settles him down a wee bit.
He then asks about the phasers that were found on them, but Kirk doesn't respond, and Enig tells the Major that the lab has been unable to find out how they work. Now, I don't get this. Surely a phaser's just a button.
Yeah, but they want to reverse engineer it so they can make more.
Yeah, but do they even know what it does?
Nope. They just know it's a shooter.
But have they shot it?
Well, we don't find that out, but I would imagine they've tried to take it apart to see what it's functioning.
I've got an issue with that. If you consider well, I suppose, what year is this in that planet?
We don't know.
Do they know about phasers?
I don't think so, but...
Because...
See, this is the thing that came up to me or occurred to me while I was watching the episode. They must know about space travel because the Zeons have come from another planet.
Yeah. To
mix with them. So they're aware that, and they've got these missiles that they send into space, and they talk about on the propaganda video about space.
Yeah, so even though they're not advanced themselves, how much do they know? Because I'm thinking, if, say they were at the level of 1940s, Nazi level of technology.
Yeah.
If you found a phaser and you pressed the button and you could see what the damage it could do, you wouldn't. Your first reaction, I don't think, would be to let's break this open and reverse engineer it. You'd be thinking, wow, this is a crazy technology. I'm just going to use this just now.
Yeah, maybe.
I won't send it to the lab and then break it.
It happens quite a lot in these shows that the people that they encounter don't appear to have any capability to imagine something beyond their current capabilities. So we don't have phasers, but we imagine them. They're in our stories. And if you came across one and you shot it, well, that's cool, that's a laser, we haven't invented that yet. Or you would have a name for it, or you would have an idea that, okay, this is beyond what we can do, but I get the theory.
Yeah.
But people in these shows seem to just be, if they've only got bows and arrows, they can only conceive of bows and arrows. So, this projectile
apart
shooter.
From Joan Collins.
Yeah, that's why she was a visionary.
She was.
And had to die.
Who always pontificated to down and outs.
Yeah, only down and outs. The Major's quite keen at this point to progress to execution when Enig points out that he's not been able to get any answers so far.
Yeah, I think he sort of looks down upon him. He says that the SS doesn't realise that punishment is ineffective after a certain point. Now, I agree with that, but not at this point. They've lightly tapped.
Swatted them on the back.
They weren't even yelling in pain.
Well, we heard at the start of the show, Kirk thought he'd done a good job on his back.
Yeah, exactly. That's the type of thing. It's, my massage.
A bit of an ache.
Yeah, done a good job. It's not torture, is it?
No. Enig's position here is that they've not learned anything yet, so they're going to leave them to suffer with the welts and the pain from their torture, and then come back for some answers in an hour. And the Major's of the view that would be the point for execution to take place.
Yes.
He's quite into this whole execution thing.
Oh, he's desperate to kill them.
I mean, the impression you get during the episode is that they haven't actually got around to executing anybody. That they're about to start executions.
Yes.
So it's not like there's going to be this unforgivable sort of...
I think for the show it might have been too dark.
Yeah, and also you couldn't reconcile probably at that point.
Yeah. There's no way back from that.
Yeah.
So they've all left, and now in their cell, Kirk talks of Gil being a kind and gentle man and can't believe that he could ever be a Nazi.
That's always the ones you least suspect.
Well, that's it. I mean, if you look like a Nazi and act like a Nazi, you wouldn't get very far.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty easy to pick out these days.
They certainly are. With their red hats. No.
Well, they're quite pale. And they say that all lives matter.
Yeah.
Anyhow, when the guards who are stationed outside leave, Isaac, which is the name of this Zeon man that they saw earlier, comes over to the bars between the cells and asks a few questions.
Yeah, he wants to know why the Nazis took them, as they are not Zeons. And Spock responds by asking why they hate the Zeons.
Isaac explains that this is just to create a common enemy to hold the Ecos or the Ecosian people together.
Yeah, well, I took it as being a little bit more than that they're such a hateful people that they needed someone to vent against. They needed an enemy.
Yeah, well, the impression I took was that they used to fight amongst themselves, but now that they've given them an external enemy, it's allowed the Ecosian society to unify against that one target.
And that's what happened with the Nazis, obviously.
Sure.
That's how they got a lot of the rank and file on board by creating this boogeyman.
Germany was historically quite a fragmented country.
Yeah, you had to create a boogeyman.
Yeah, and people still do that, like the EU.
Spock asks if they are a threat, but the man merely sneers at this and tells him that their war period ended ages ago and they came to Ecos to try and civilise them. I wasn't entirely happy with that answer.
Well, you can understand why the Ecosians might not like that.
Yeah, it's not a good look. There's a touch of the Crusades.
Yeah, we are smarter and wiser and more enlightened than you, so do what we say.
Yeah, we'll show you how to become a better people.
Little wonder they met with resistance.
Yeah.
And Spock notes that assumption that the Zeons made was premature.
Isaac goes on to say that the Ecosians were warlike when they arrived, but not vicious like they are now. That started with the Nazi movement a few years earlier.
And Spock notes that this ties in quite closely to when John Gill arrived on the planet.
Yeah. Isaac worries that the Ecosians will use the technology that they gave them to attack the planet Zeon.
Yeah, I think once they've wiped out the Zeons on Ecos, he expects them to then attack Zeon, the Zeon home planet, and that there won't be any resistance because they're such a pacifist race.
Yeah, although he believes that he could kill after what he has witnessed.
Well, indeed, circumstances have changed him.
Of course. Kirk tells him that if they can get their weapons back, that they may be able to help, but Isaac wants to know why he wants to help the Zeons. Now, I think Kirk ignores this.
Yeah, there's no response.
It's such a stupid question.
And there's a bit of a discussion about whether Isaac knows the layout of the building. Why would they assume he might know the layout of the Nazi building? He's a guy they saw on the street who's been brought here as a prisoner.
Yeah, there's no reason for that assumption.
Spock says it doesn't matter if he knows the layout of the building because there's a number of other issues to be overcome first, and the outlook is pretty grim.
Yeah, the locked cell and the guard standing outside.
Yes.
For two.
Suddenly, Kirk, who in these circumstances always happens to be slightly smarter than Spock, despite it being established that he's not slightly smarter than Spock.
And unless they're playing chess.
Indeed. He comes up with the idea of the transponders, and Spock agrees. And then there's the most brutal scene, I think, in the history of the show.
What was that?
They use a blunt bit of metal to scoop the subcutaneous transponders out of each other's arms without flinching.
Yeah.
It's like taking a spoon to your own arm and cutting something out.
Yeah, a bit nasty, wasn't it? Yeah, and so after this, they MacGyver up a laser using the light and Kirk's back, as we heard at the start of the episode. And this enables them to break open the cell door lock.
Yes, Kirk is enthused that they've managed to break free, and Spock hides while Kirk shouts for the guards to come and help him.
And he gets a good pinching.
The guard does, yes, and they take his uniform, leave him naked in the corner.
I don't want to bring Isaac with them, but he insists that they won't be able to find the lab.
Yeah, they still have no reason to think he would know, but Kirk decides to overrule Spock's concerns and bring him along.
So upstairs, they come across another guard on the way to the lab, but they're able to get past him by using Kirk in his uniform.
Yes, Kirk is marching these others for experimentation, which the guy seems to just accept. And then Kirk also stumbles into him and picks his pocket for the keys.
Inside the lab, they find the disassembled communicators, but learn that the phasers have been sent to Gestapo HQ for inspection. And outside, we see the guard who was pickpocketed. He starts to return
He realises that the key's missing.
He's got his pistol out.
He comes in and Isaac beats him from behind. And Kirk notes that was pretty brutally efficient for a peace-loving man.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, but everyone's got their limits, or their breaking point.
Yeah. Isaac says that with the uniform they can now get in a car and leave the capital, but Kirk insists that they're not going to do that. They're going to see the Fuhrer.
Yeah, well, they're here for... Their mission is to find Gil.
Yeah, and they think he's in this building.
Which is very convenient.
Yeah, everything was quite convenient.
But Spock points out that without their phasers or communicators, it is unlikely that they can hold out against the army of Nazis.
Yeah, so Kirk acknowledges this, tells him to put the uniform on, and I think they're going to go with Isaac, follow his plan.
Yeah, so they exit carrying Isaac on a stretcher, telling the guards that they need to dump him before they are able to climb down a manhole. And then they climb through a tunnel and are met with two members of the Resistance. Who are they?
Well, I think one of them is Abram.
The other one, I think, was David.
Okay. It's all very biblical names. Abraham, Isaac, David.
Sure.
They're really hitting this analogy hard on the nose.
Very. Abram's the brother of Isaac.
Yes, they're clearly pleased to see each other, and Kirk is at this point asked what he was trying to do.
Yeah. I'd like to point out as well, I thought that Isaac, it reminded me very much of Lenny Bruce in the way he spoke and also how he looked.
Okay.
Anyway, just a thought.
Kirk explains that he was trying to stop this insanity and he thinks he can do it if he sees the Fuhrer.
However, Abram has a more pressing matter he wants to talk to Isaac about and gives him the devastating news that his wife-to-be was shot down in the street.
She lived for 5 hours while they walked past her and spat on her. Our own people were unable to help her. Now you ask me to help strangers.
If we adapt the ways of the Nazis, we're as bad as the Nazis.
Captain, I suggest the most profitable use of our time would be to reassemble our communicators. May I work undisturbed somewhere? This way.
So Spock gets a room to work in, and he's using bits from each communicator to make one working device.
But the Enterprise won't be in range for an hour or so to test it. And at this, they are interrupted as armed guards come in with the other three.
Yes, the Nazis have stormed the bunker, led by Daris, the woman they saw earlier on the propaganda broadcast, and they both recognise her.
Yeah, I think on this broadcast she was receiving a medal.
The Iron Cross.
Was that what it was, yeah?
Yes, she was a hero of the fatherland.
And Kirk remembers her name. Of course he does, the young blonde.
Yeah, no wonder. He's made a note that she's on his list.
She orders the Zeon swine to raise their arms and asks what they intended to do after escaping.
Yeah, and there's a bit of a discussion, and at some point Abram takes responsibility.
Yeah, and this doesn't appears not to be a wise move, because Daras then shows them what they do with those responsible.
Yeah, she shoots him and he dies.
And she goes to point the gun at Kirk to finish the job. He manages to overcome her, and then we discover something.
Yes, it was all an elaborate test of loyalty for Kirk and Spock.
Yeah.
Turns out that Daris herself is part of the Resistance.
And Abram is not dead. They've passed the test.
They have.
Spock is still not convinced with Daris, however, and mentions that he saw her being awarded a medal.
Yeah. You also get Isaac here chucking in this thing about the underground being composed of cells, but no one's asked this, and it's not really relevant to what's going on.
No.
Anyway, yes.
What's the medal for?
The medal was for turning in her father.
Yeah, he used to be close to the Fuhrer, but saw where they were headed and denounced the movement.
Yeah, and he convinced her to turn him in as a way to embed herself more deeply.
And the father was imprisoned and sentenced to death.
By Melicon. I think was in Transformers.
Was he?
And Kirk asks about this Melicon fellow and learns that he is the deputy Führer who seems to be in charge these days.
And then I think he goes on to mention Gil.
He does. He explains about him and who he is, and Darius is shocked because she grew up admiring and then hating this man and is stunned that he was sent to the planet to wipe them out.
Yeah, she can't believe that the Führer is an alien.
Yeah, Kirk says he wasn't sent to do this, and that's why they're trying to figure out what's going on.
However, Isaac says that it is impossible to speak with him as he sees no one besides Melicon and is under maximum security in any case.
Yeah, because there's plenty of people who would kill him given the opportunity.
Yeah, Kirk doesn't understand what is going on and why Ecosians and younger Zeons would want to kill Gil.
Well, yeah, he doesn't, based on the Gil that he knows, but obviously there's something strange here. Darius says that tonight is an important night because the Führer is making a speech at the Chancellery and all the top brass will be there. She herself is invited.
But only the top brass will be there. The rest of the country is going to watch it on the big screens.
Yeah.
Kill Gil, was that not a Tarantino? Kill Gil 2?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Spock thinks that this could be an opportunity. Darius could get them past the guards.
Yeah, I mean, I think Isaac thinks the purpose of this speech, to be clear, is to declare war on Zeons.
Yes, their final solution.
Yeah, so the clock's ticking here. I don't have much time left.
No, and Darius is wary of Spock's plan, but Isaac is very keen to join in. She doesn't think there's any chance of getting Isaac in the building. But he's determined to try.
Yeah.
So now it's that evening.
At the Chancellery. They put their plan into action, with Kirk, Spock and Isaac pretending to be, this is quite inventive, I like this, cameramen who are following Darius into the building as part of a documentary. Where did they get all this gear from?
She must have had it. Or
why would she? Why would any of them have recording equipment?
Who knows? She refers to them as the Führer's Special Documentary Corps. And they sail through security.
And once inside, and
this was jarring for me. This next.
Okay, and adrenaline. I mean, I don't know if Vulcans have adrenaline, but an adrenaline-filled Spock admits to now understanding the thrill of risk and gambling.
Yeah, where's this come from? This is not the most risky thing he's done.
No.
Normally he would just tell them the odds and carry on.
Yeah.
Kirk says they'll make a human of him yet, and then he says, "I hope not." He's half human. I don't understand.
Well, maybe he means, I don't want to be a full human, I'm only half.
Why is he even engaging in this conversation?
I don't know. Yeah, and why would Kirk want to imply that he should be changed, that the humans are better?
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, it's like mixed race. I will make a white person of you yet. It's like, no, I'm...
I like the way that
yeah, don't try and change me.
Wrong with me. Anyway, they come to the entrance to the main room of this building where all the top officers are gathered. Darius points out the booth where the Führer will be broadcasting from to Kirk.
Yeah, they can see that's been curtained off, and so they walk down the corridor towards the entrance to this booth.
Yes, Isaac offers to get a gun from somebody and just fire into the booth.
Yeah, no. Isaac, calm yourself there, Isaac, calm yourself. What they do is they bamboozle the guards with some patter, and Spock is able to have a little peek in and see Gil sitting in a chair with guards both sides.
But he's completely motionless.
Yes. And having received confirmation from Spock that Gil was in this room but that he didn't move at all, Kirk decides that they need McCoy to see if he was drugged or hypnotised. Why can't they just beam him up? Why do they need Spock, McCoy to come down? Because
he doesn't have a communicator or a subcutaneous transponder.
But
they need to be with him to get him beamed up. They don't have access to him at this point.
Yeah, but they're going to have to communicate to get McCoy to come down.
Yeah, it's a story.
Okay.
They need privacy, so Isaac suggests the cloakroom.
Yeah, and so Spock and Kirk enter to put the communicator to the test. And they do manage to get through, although the signal is quite weak.
Uhura complains that they're 9 points into the low frequency band.
Yeah, well, sure.
Kirk wants McCoy outfitted as a Gestapo doctor from Nazi Germany, 1944. He's to be made a colonel.
Yeah.
And you wonder if McCoy's there thinking, are they taking the mickey?
Yeah.
Well, why am I doing that? And he's going to beam down to a planet that's no other Nazi.
No, it's just him. It's full of Jewish people. We found a lost colony of Jewish people.
Here's what would be really funny.
Yeah, that'll be... it's like in Die Hard 3.
Yes.
Where he's
got the sandwich board.
Yeah.
Uhura acknowledges this, and We see Isaac now milling around the main room when he hears Enig call for a search of the building.
Back in the cloakroom, Darius enters and tells them that their communications were picked up and that they are indeed searching the building for them. Kirk then speaks with Ahura, who says that McCoy's having a problem with his clothes, but he demands that he's sent down right now.
Naked if necessary.
Yeah.
McCoy is beamed down, he's just trying to get his shoe on, and Darius is shocked to see him material. Why is she shocked? They've got interplanetary travel, surely they can conceive of a transfer. Anyway, yeah. McCoy says one of the shoes has been made too small, and then we get Spock. This again was jarring, giving him the logical way to put a shoe on.
Yeah,
it was silly.
It was silly. But before he can be brought up to speed on what's going on, the doors burst open and they are faced with 3 Nazis pointing machine guns at them.
Yes, Enig is with them, and Kirk explains that they've found that the Colonel is drunk and they're keeping him hidden here, which Enig says is the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think they're claiming that they don't want to embarrass anyone.
Yes.
And this, for some reason, seems to work. At this point, a buzzer sounds, which signals the start of the Führer's speech, and so they head back to the main room to listen.
Hail the Führer! Hail the Führer! Hail the Führer! Excursions. The job ahead is difficult. It requires courage and dedication. It requires faith. The Zeon colony has existed for nearly half a century.
Watch his mouth.
If we fulfill our own greatness, that will all be ended. Working together.
His speech follows no logical pattern.
Random sentences strung together.
He looks drugged, Jim. Almost at a cataleptic state.
To reach our goal. And we will reach that goal.
Let's get a close look at him.
Take must be decisive. Every thought directed toward a goal. This planet can become a paradise if we are willing to pay the price. As each cell in the body works with discipline and harmony for the good of the entire being,
Gentlemen,
so must
I want a picture of you two with the hero of the fatherland listening to the stirring Führer's speech. Get that light over there, please. Get this light around here. Smile, gentlemen. Smile, turn around. Smile, and now.
And that's the 2 guards outside the booth dealt with by way of neck pinch and a stranglehold.
Back in the main room, the Nazis are still hailing the Führer and pledging death to Zeon based on Gil's supposed orders.
Yes, Melicon calls this a sacred task.
Over in the booth, McCoy confirms that the near comatose Gil has in fact been drugged but can't give an antidote as he doesn't know what was used to dope him up without his Medicomp. Not a tricorder.
Well, apparently not.
I've not heard of a Medicomp before.
No, neither have I. All that he can offer is a general stimulant, but it will be risky. Well, with an episode full of the entire ship being bammed up in general stimulants.
It does give him it, does administer it anyway, but it doesn't appear to work, and even though a higher dose may kill him, Kirk tells him to increase it. I was thinking, can he not just simply do a weekend at Bernie's here?
They were already wording about a weekend at Bernie's. That's what I was just thinking. Melicon's doing it.
Yeah. They hear Melicon over the speakers confirm that the purge has now started and that Zeons will be eliminated within an hour. Within an hour, now that's impressive. I mean, how many Zeons are there here?
We don't know, but
if they can do it in an hour,
well,
can't be that many.
You wouldn't have thought, but you hope not.
Yeah, they're also very efficient.
Darius says at this point that it's finally begun, and McCoy notes that Gil is beginning to respond to the stimulant. He's no longer drugged out his mind, he's just sleeping.
Yeah, and so yeah, Kirk tells Spock to mind probe him, and just as well he says mind probe, Spock, probe him. Not like that. Your mind.
And apparently, we hear Melicon here saying that the space fleet is headed to the planet Zeon with manned and unmanned weapons.
Oof.
And that this is the time of destiny.
Yeah, it's always a time of destiny, isn't it?
Yeah, the others all hail the victory. Bit premature.
Yeah.
Darius suggests that they destroy the Ecosian fleet using the Enterprise. And Kirk says no, because they're going to kill all the Ecosians if that happens. And she says that's the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, well, she has a point. She says on balance, yeah, it might be better to do that than sacrifice the millions of lives that will otherwise be lost. Spock then calls them over to let them know that he's managed to create a particular condition.
Yeah, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Gil can answer questions but not initiate speech himself.
That is absolute
Get out
garbage.
here.
You're just making stuff up for this episode now. What sort of, how would that work?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just garbage writing.
Yes. It's lazy,
Very
and silly.
Gene or whoever, Roddenberry often changes it, doesn't he?
It's probably his fault.
Well, yeah, or else he didn't bother looking over this episode. Nope. Strike that. Go back into the writing room and come up with something better. We're not filming this, no.
Spock also notes at this point that for some time now, the real power has been Melicon.
Yeah. Kirk then questions Gil and pleads with him for an answer as to why he abandoned the non-interference directive and modelled the society on Nazis. It's a fair question.
Well, Gil basically says it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah, he said the planet was divided and needed structure, and you know what, the Nazis, you can say what you like about them, but they were organised and well structured.
Spock says that's fair enough.
Yeah, he says, yeah, got a point.
Nazis were pretty good.
Yeah.
Gil says it was working until Melicon started drugging him and took over.
And at this, he reverts to an unconscious state and doesn't respond when Kirk grabs him and tells him that he is the only one that can talk to the people and prevent the impending slaughter.
McCoy refuses at this point to further stimulate him.
Yeah, so Kirk grabs him, orders him to, but they are interrupted at this point.
Yes, the guards and Enig come in as Kirk tells Darius to turn her rifle on Spock.
Yeah, and again, they fall for this garbage again.
Yeah, well, we're about to find out why. Isaac hails Darius as a hero for the second time today, having captured a spy who was trying to assassinate the Führer, and Kirk says they should make a present of him to Melicon, which Enig agrees to do.
But there is another twist.
Yes, once he leaves with Spock and the guards, Isaac reveals that Enig is part of the resistance. How would you know if it's all cells?
Yeah, that's the whole point of cells, isn't it?
Yeah.
You only know what you need to know.
He obviously knows too much. He could have given up, Enig.
Right, kill him.
Anyway, Kirk tells him to stay close to Spock and stall, and he's left alone with Gil.
In the main room, Spock is presented to Melicon, who agrees he's definitely not a Zeon.
Meanwhile, Kirk overrules McCoy's advice and injects Gil with further stimulants and asks if he can hear him because he needs to speak.
Doesn't seem to be a success, however. Back in the main room, Melicon is inspecting Spock and claims that his sinister eyes and malformed ears mark him out as being from an inferior race. Which, again, it's very on the nose, isn't it? Like,
yes,
you know, the
master race and everything, yeah. Kirk has passed the point of medical intervention and gone to his trusted solution for unconscious people.
What's that? Give him a slap?
Yes. This wakes Gil up as Kirk implores him to talk because he has to tell people what happened.
Back in the main room, Melicon continues to degrade Spock, but is interrupted by the appearance of Gil on the viewing screen.
Note the low forehead denoting stupidity, the dull look of a trapped animal. You may take him now for interrogation, but I want the body saved for the Cultural Museum. He'll make an interesting display.
People of Ecos.
Go to the booth. See to the Fuhrer at once he's ill. Turn off that camera.
Hear me.
I suggest we leave and let our Fuhrer rest.
We were betrayed by a self-seeking adventurer who has led us all to the very brink of disaster. I ordered the immediate recall of the space fleet. This attack must stop. All units are to return to base. To Zeon, I promise This was not an aggression of the Okosan people. Only one evil man. Melicon is a traitor to his own people. And all that we stand for, the Zeon people, I promise reparation.
Yeah, that was Melicon shooting into the booth and fortunately missing Kirk and shooting only Gil.
Yeah, he got lucky there, didn't he? Or unlucky.
Depends how you look at it.
There was a touch of the Wizard of Oz.
A little bit, yes, the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, paying no attention to him.
Isaac, at this point, picks up a weapon and shoots Melicon dead, and Enig prevents a soldier from shooting at Isaac.
Yeah, he tells them that enough is enough, and from now on, they should live the way that the Führer wanted them to. It's a strange...
never mind.
Inside the booth, Kirk cradles the dying Gil, who admits that he was wrong and that he should have obeyed the non-interference directive.
It's a bit of, if I couldn't do this, nobody could.
Yeah, I was definitely wrong. No.
No interference, the only way. If I couldn't achieve this.
He continues to state that they must stop the slaughter, and Kirk reveals that he did. His message was received in time. Spock
comes in and Kirk confirms that Gil has died, and Isaac now regrets this, having hoped for it for quite some time.
Yes. Enig then advises them to go, and Dara says that she will go on the air and provide a new direction for the people, Zeons and Ecosians alike.
I think, yeah, she and Enig will lead.
Well, you can't, I mean, are they allowed to just take that position?
Yes.
They'll become dictators shortly as well, won't they?
Absolute power.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're about to hear. Spock thinks that the planet could eventually be a member of the Federation.
This is it's a very quick...
Yeah, they've solved Nazism. Let's move on.
It's an odd one.
Kirk gets them beamed up, and a wee bit later, on the bridge, Spock is still struggling to understand where Gil was coming from.
Yeah, Kirk explains that he just... he sort of simplifies this, doesn't he? He says, he just drew the wrong conclusion from history and didn't appreciate the power and influence that a leader could have. It's quite a big mistake to make, creating a
new Nazi regime. Yeah. That's things.
Anyone can do it.
Butterfly effect, really, yeah. McCoy and Spock then get into a big argument about whether humans are wise or corrupt.
Yeah, I think this should be used more sparingly. We've got this
a couple of times recently, yeah.
Yeah. It just seems a little bit an easy sort of go-to to wrap up an episode.
Yeah, Kirk intervenes, stops another civil war happening on the bridge when they've just fixed one, and then they head off at Warp 2 for another adventure.
They do.
It's a bold subject choice.
It was. Well, like I said at the start of the podcast, I don't think it was jarring. I don't think they were, overly insensitive. I don't think it would be... I don't think anyone would be offended watching it. Well, most people wouldn't be offended watching it, I don't think.
What do you think about the comedy elements that they forced in there?
Like
the fact Kirk was making jokes throughout the entire episode, and then Spock suddenly was full of adrenaline. And
yeah. Well, yeah, again, as I mentioned, I think that at this point in the 60s, enough time's passed, and I think maybe the fact is that they've now got over the initial fallout to the horrors that they witnessed, and I think what happens is that people then start to say, okay, well, if you can poke fun at them now, you try to sort of
you can take the power away.
Take the power away, yeah. You can laugh at it. You can't do that straight away. You can't laugh at them in the first year or two. Everyone is coming to terms with the atrocities that happened.
Things are still coming. Yeah.
And then I think you're trying, as a society, you're trying to rebuild, and one of the ways in doing that is to look at to joke, to make them into figures of fun. Mm-hmm. To an extent, there's been lots of movies that have done that, and they have ridiculed Hitler. That's part of the rebuilding process that goes on. There's many if you look at the producers, for example, and things like that. So yeah, I think we're at that stage where it was acceptable and it wasn't overly done. They didn't.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I thought it was quite a good episode, but it was a bit on the nose.
It was very on the nose.
Unsubtle, and I thought the writing wasn't brilliant.
No, it wasn't great. It's not the type of subject matter that probably, you're going to get Star Trek writers to do properly. They
could have been done better.
Yeah, they weren't. If you want to do it, subtly, and with a lot of taste and delicacy. Yeah,
Okay.
the Star Trek writers weren't the guys to do it.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
No, but I mean, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was good.
It was one that, again, if I was flicking through the TV and it was on, I would probably stop and give it a watch.
And not say to the folk with you, it's the one with the dress as Nazis.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we get some trivia?
Yeah, let's go.
It's broadcast on the 16th of February 1968, directed by Vincent Macavity. We know that name.
You do?
This was the 4th of his 6 episodes, and if you want to hear more about him, go back to the podcast for Miri.
Big Columbo connection with him.
Of course, we've already talked about that though. John Meredith Lucas wrote the story. Obviously, he's the showrunner, essentially, at this point. This is the second of 4 scripts attributed to him. And if you want to hear more about him, go back to the podcast for The Changeling. Richard Evans played Isaac. This was his only Star Trek appearance, but he also appeared in shows like The A-Team, Bonanza, and The FBI, and he's now 86 years old. Valora Noland played Daris. This was her only Star Trek appearance, and she also appeared in shows like Mannix and The Man from U.N.C.L.E., but she stopped acting shortly after filming this episode.
Why? She'll have nothing to do with this episode.
Well, we'll come back to that. She's now 79 years old.
Okay.
Skip Homeyer. He played Melicon.
Okay.
This was the first of 2 appearances on the show, and he also showed up in series like Ironside and The $6 Million Man. He died in 2017 at the age of 86. David Bryan was John Gill. This was his only Star Trek role, but he also appeared in shows like I Dream of Jeannie and Mission Impossible. He died in 1993 when he was 78. Patrick Horgan played Enig. This was his only Star Trek appearance. He also appeared in shows like Mission Impossible and Bewitched, and he's now 91 years old.
Do we have a Columbo connection this week?
We do. It's William Winterson. He played Abram. This was his only Star Trek appearance, much like the majority of the cast, but he also showed up on series like The Partridge Family, The Waltons, and 1 episode of Columbo. Season 4's A Deadly State of Mind, which makes him this week's connection. He died in 2019 when he was 88. Some trivia.
Sure.
This episode was not shown in Germany until the mid-90s, but it was not one of the episodes that were banned by the BBC in the UK.
Okay.
The episode uses stock footage from the actual Nazi propaganda film, The Triumph of the Will.
That's it.
I think it's a car, and Hitler's actually in the car.
Really?
In the footage that they use.
There you go.
Apparently, Valora Noland, as you kind of hinted at, she objected when they revealed to her that her costume had a swastika on it. Her parents were actual refugees from Nazi Germany, and there's some suggestion that might have been involved in her decision to stop acting.
Yeah, I mean, I have my doubts about that. You would think that if you, even at a brief glance at the script, it would say you're playing you could probably work out that you might have to wear that sort of stuff. Yeah.
In terms of international titles, the French opted for Fraternité, which means brotherhood. In Japan, it was Ikosu Nachisu no Kyofu, which is fear of Ikos Nazis. There's no German title, obviously, because at the time that the book I used was written, it hadn't been shown in Germany yet.
Okay.
And Next Time, 22nd episode of Season 2, by Any Other Name, which features an unusual weapon.
Ah.
Until then, you can keep up with us on social media, where we're at Trek Podcast on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. You can go to astartrekpodcast.com, where there's a post up for every show where you can leave your thoughts and reminiscences. And if you want to watch or listen, I suppose, to the podcast on YouTube, it's available on our channel there as well.
Is that us?
It is.
Okay, until then.
Cheerio.
Bye bye.